All right, geometry, let's do this. So this lesson is going to cover the distance and midpoint formulas. Now, these formulas work with points on a coordinate plane. Okay, this is not just any two dots you draw on a piece of paper. This is in respect to the coordinate plane. So the distance formula, basically, you're going to subtract your x's, subtract your y's, square them, add them together, and take the square root. Midpoint. It's just the average of your x's and the average of your y's. You just add your x's divide by 2, add your y's divide by 2. Okay, so those are just some formulas that you'll need to know. So we're going to take 2 points and we're just going to find the midpoint and find the distance of these points just practicing the formula. So the midpoint, again, is the average of your x's and y's. So we're going to first add our x's. So 2 plus 8 is 10. Divide that by 2, and you get 5. Comma, now we're going to add our y's. So 3 plus a negative 7 would be a negative 4 divided by 2 is a negative 2. So that's all you need to do for midpoint. Now distance is a little bit more challenging. What you need to do first of all is you need a big old square root. Then you need your parentheses squared. Inside, you subtract your x's. So we'll have 8 minus 2. And we're going to have to subtract our y's, which is a negative 7 minus 3. Now you work with the parentheses first. So 8 minus 2 is 6 squared, plus negative 7 minus 3 is a negative 10 squared. If we square 6, we get 36 plus square a negative 10 and we get 100. So that is the square root of 136. And then you just have to read the directions and make sure if it's asking you to simplify the radical and give an exact answer or round. So if we were to simplify this, we would just have to use the factor tree and we would end up with 2 square roots of 34. If I said round to the nearest tenth, then you would just type the square root of 136 in the calculator and get 11.7. Okay, so just make sure you read the directions and answer the question appropriately. Okay? So here are some more practice problems. The first is a group of 3 problems where I just want you to find the midpoint. And the next 3 questions after that are finding the distance between point A and B, or the length of AB. When you have AB 2 points listed with no symbol on top, that means find the distance from A to B, or the length of segment AB. Okay, now these problems are for you to try. You already watched me do a midpoint, and you already watched me do a distance. I would like you to pause the video, and I would like you to first try to find the midpoint of those 3 problems. And when you're ready, click play, and then after that, we'll do the distance. Okay, so pause the video and give these a shot on your own. So let's see if you got the midpoint questions correct. Again, you add your x's divide by 2, add your y's divide by 2. So 4 minus 3 is 1, half of that is 1/2. 0 plus 11 is 11, half of that is 11/2, and that's it, you're done. Second one, negative 2 plus 2 is 0, divided by 2 is still 0. 4 minus 4 is 0, divided by 2 is still 0. Now the last one was an expression because there was a variable a. That doesn't mean you can't do the problem, you just leave your answer as an expression. So 2a plus 6 is 2a plus 6 divided by 2. So we just have to take half of it. So 2a divided by 2 is a, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And for your y's, we have a plus 4 plus a, which means this is technically 2a plus 4. So then 2a divided by 2 is a, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and that's it. You're done. Okay? So the next 3 problems are practice with the distance, and you can just leave it as an exact answer. So make sure you simplify your radical, and just practice these 3. As soon as you are done, press play, and we'll see if you got the answers correct for the distance. So press pause and give them a try. If you got 5 for the first one, you are correct. Remember, with the distance formula, you subtract your x's and subtract your y's, but then you square them. So 5 minus 2 is 3 squared is 9. 8 minus 4 is 4 squared, which is 16. So 9 plus 16 is 25, and the square root of 25 is 5. Don't forget the square root at the end. In the next example, very similar setup. 8 minus 3 is 5 squared is 25. 9 minus 4 is 5 squared is 25, and 25 plus 25 is 50. But it said exact answers. That means you must use the factor tree to simplify, and you'll end up with 25 and 2, 5 and 5, so it's 5 root 2 when you're done. Last one. The only catch to this was to see if I could trick you with a negative. Remember, a negative 2 squared is a positive 4. So 2 minus 4 is a negative 2 squared is still a positive 4. That's why we have 4 plus 4 is 8, and the square root of 8 is 2 root 2. All right? So that is your practice with the distance formula. Now we're going to go try a couple more questions, and then I'll give you a challenge problem, and we will see how you feel after that. It's finding the other endpoint when you are given an endpoint and a midpoint. So here's the thought. So we have a point at 6, 2 somewhere. And then at 1, 4, we have the midpoint. So this is in the middle of this endpoint and some other endpoint, and we want to know what the coordinates of that endpoint are. Well, we can do it algebraically by setting up the midpoint formula, or we can take a little shortcut approach, shall we say, just thinking about it logically. We know the midpoint is in the middle of these 2 points. So how do we get from 6 to 1? You have to subtract 5. So all you have to do is subtract 5 from 1, and you'll have negative 4. That's it. And you do the same thing for y. If we have an endpoint at 2 going to the midpoint at 4, we add 2. So then we just have to add 2 to 4, and that'll bring us to 6. So your other endpoint is negative 4, 6. Now, if you want to check to see if you did things correctly, you take your 2 endpoints and you find the midpoint of them. So if we were finding the midpoint of A and the other endpoint B, we would do 6 minus 4 divided by 2, comma, and then we would do 2 plus 6 divided by 2, and that would give us 2 over 2 is 1, 8 over 2 is 4, and it checks to the midpoint that we did. So if you want to take the time to double check your answer, you go right ahead. Otherwise, you just have to make sure, remember, a midpoint is right in the middle of 2 points. The midpoint should be equidistant from points A and B. So why don't you pause the video and try the next 2. I want you to find the other endpoint, so the endpoint B for these next 2 examples. Give it a try. You should have 10, 12, and you should have 9, negative 1. Again, how do you get from x to x? You added 4, so you add 4 to that x and you get 10. How do you get from 4 to 8? You add 4, so add 4 to 8 and you get 12. Okay, do the same thing with the second example. So this last example is a challenge problem. And what you need to do is draw a triangle, find the distance from A to B, B to C, and A to C, add them all together, and see if you come up with the perimeter of triangle ABC. So go ahead, pause the video, and see if you can come up with the correct answer. This is a challenge problem. You have to use the distance formula 3 times. Press pause and give it a try. So if you got the perimeter is 10.5, you did this problem correctly, and you are good to go. This is Longo, and I'm out. See you, bye.